Hi, church. It's Matt here. I just wanted to basically do a quick recording with just sort of a supplement to my sermon from Sunday on James 3, 13 through 18. We talked a lot about wisdom, and we made the focus much more on the role of the heart in wisdom, which I think is right to the text. But I also didn't want to miss an opportunity to talk a little bit about actually applying the wisdom of the passage to walking in wisdom in life. And so I just have really three sort of practical takeaways that anchored in the text that I would exhort us to as a church. The first one recognizes that sort of the contextual backdrop of the passage was quarreling within the community that James is writing to. He talks about bitterness or bitter jealousy and selfish ambition. And when he's talking about the fruit of wisdom, a lot of those fruit are really relational in orientation, peaceable, gentle, open to reason, sincere, and impartial. And these are impossible fruits to apply outside of a context of a relationship. And then just a couple passages later, he talks about quarreling. And so I wanted to draw attention to the fact that probably the most immediate way to apply the wisdom of this particular text is to go and be reconciled to one another, especially in the life of our church. If there is any sense of infighting, or you've wronged your brother, or your brother has wronged you, or you wronged your sister has wronged you, to go and reconcile to one another. If you've brought wisdom from below into that relationship, you've brought quarreling or selfish ambition, acknowledge that and confess that to them and ask for forgiveness and take that immediate step to practice godly wisdom with one another. So that's the first one. The second one, it has to do somewhat with something Nate said last week that I think carries into this text as well, which is that the word that we let into our ears makes its way into our hearts, and then that word makes its way back out in our words, in our actions. And there is a lot of fake wisdom floating around out there that is masquerading as true wisdom. And we all have to make our judgments about the voices that are good to listen to and the voices that aren't. What I would call us to do is to evaluate the voices that we are listening to according to the fruit of wisdom. And we know from this passage that wisdom from above is peaceable, is gentle, is open to reason, is impartial and sincere. I don't hear a lot of wisdom that sounds like that when I, for example, watch cable news or see things floating around on social media. It doesn't mean it's not out there, but it's rare. And so I would just caution us as a church to be mindful of the voices that we are listening to, and that we would truly discern, is this a voice of wisdom? Does it have the marks of wisdom? And if not, it's not that we plug our ears against everything. I think it's important for us to listen to what we hear around the world, but think about it in terms of a balanced diet and turning the volume down on those influences. And then the last thing I would say is, we sit in this sort of smog of earthly wisdom, and we have got to get up the mountain to have fresh air and to experience godly wisdom. And, one thing Jesus did was get away literally to a mountain to pray and be with the Father. And I think a great thing for our church to do is to commit, some of the passages that we looked at in the sermon to memory, whether it's the Beatitudes or the fruit of the Spirit, or that later part of our passage where it's talking about wisdom that is pure and peaceable and so on. If this is what wisdom is, and we are in the business of growing in wisdom, then we ought to know what it is we're looking for and what it is we're trying to grow in. So, I a few weeks ago memorized the Beatitudes, and honestly, it's brought already so much clarity to my prayer life. When I assess my own way of being in the world and my way of relating to people, I sometimes am like, well, I've not been peaceable, or I've not been a peacemaker, I've not been meek. And so I would just encourage you to store up the word in your heart, and it's a very practical first step to beginning that journey or continuing that journey into the heart of wisdom. So those are just three words of practical application that I would exhort us to. One is to be reconciled to each other. One is to open the windows to voices of wisdom in our life and try and block out some of those voices that are actually corrupting our minds and hearts. And then the third is to commit these beautiful truths to memory. Thank you, Christ Church. God bless you.